December 1924. Nome, Alaska. A harbor town at the absolute edge of the world. As it did every year, the town entered a season of total isolation. The Bering Sea was locked tight under sheets of ice several meters thick. For 6 months, all incoming ships completely ceased. There were no roads. The only thing connecting this town to the outside world was a single telegraph wire crawling across the frozen earth. Trapped in a darkness of -40 degrees, an invisible reaper was now quietly slipping into the town. To the doorstep of Curtis Welch, the town's only physician, children complaining of sore throats were brought, one after another. At first, it was thought to be a common tonsillitis, so typical of this brutal cold. But the turn for the worse came far too quickly. By the very next day, a strange, grayish-white membrane, a pseudomembrane, adhered to the children's throats. It was a demonic barrier choking off the airway. The children clawed at their throats, gasping violently, their faces twisting into expressions of agony from suffocation right before their parents' eyes. Diphtheria, an infectious disease so lethal back then that a single outbreak could wipe out every child without immunity. Dr. Welch felt the blood drain from his face. From the depths of his freezing medicine cabinet, he pulled out a few small glass vials. But the moment he read the label, he was plunged into absolute despair. The antitoxin left in town was a mere 8,000 units, and worse, every single unit had long since expired. There was no guarantee it would even work. Instead, the degraded medicine risked causing fatal shock. January 1925. Finally, the first official death was recorded. After that, day after day, more children ceased to breathe. The population of Nome, including the indigenous people, was roughly 2,000. Among them, the children numbered only a few hundred. At this rate, within weeks, not a single child would be left alive in this town. With a trembling hand, Dr. Welch tapped out a message on the telegraph keys. Diphtheria outbreak in Nome. Urgent. Requesting 1 million units of antitoxin. I repeat, send antitoxin immediately. The telegraph reached all across Alaska. In Anchorage, a city 1,000 kilometers to the south, 300,000 units of the antitoxin were found. But how could they transport it to Nome? Around January 20th, 1925, fearing the total annihilation of their children, the Nome Town Council, in an emergency meeting, made a desperate, almost madness-driven decision. They would send Leonard Seppala, the town's strongest musher, and his lead dog, Togo, toward Nenana, the rail terminus 1,000 kilometers away. They were to leave immediately, alone. However, to run a snow-covered trail exceeding 1,000 kilometers round trip with just a single team would take far too much time. The children's lives would not hold out. January 24th. Seeing the gravity of the situation, the governor of Alaska tapped out a telegram, ordering an additional operation. An emergency mobilization was sent to the daredevil men living in every settlement along the Iditarod Trail, the mail route connecting Nenana to Nome. The indigenous people of Alaska and the mail carriers. Responding to the governor's plea, they stood up, waiting for the antitoxin baton at their respective local checkpoints. Thus, amidst the raging fury of nature, an unprecedented dog sled relay of 20 teams was formed. Each team was comprised of 6 to 13 dogs. At the time, the representative dog of Alaska was the Alaskan Malamute, bred as a working dog. They were large, powerful dogs, built for hauling heavy loads like mail and gold ore. It was into this world that Russian traders and the Norway-born Seppala introduced dogs that were a size smaller and more slender than the Malamute. Yet they possessed extraordinary stamina, resistance to the brutal cold, and, above all, speed. These small Siberian dogs would later be registered under the breed name Siberian Husky. Among the 20 teams participating in the relay, many teams of sturdy local mixed breeds, the ancestors of the Alaskan Husky, and Malamutes were mingled alongside the Siberian Huskies. January 27th. The train carrying the antitoxin finally slid into the Nenana station. Now, all that was left was for the positioned dogs to run like hell toward Nome. But the winter skies of Alaska rejected this modern technology and the obsession of men, as if laughing in their faces. The aircraft of that era were open-cockpit propeller planes. In the extreme cold of below -40 degrees, the engines themselves risked freezing and exploding in mid-air. In fact, the planes that attempted to deploy could not even be started due to the cold. The only path left was one: the primitive method of transport that was the very history of Alaska. By dog sled alone, they had to conquer this 1,085-kilometer hell in just 5 days. The thoughts of the adults were not born of soft sentiments like kindness or simple emotion. It was an obsession, ferocious and fierce, to tear the children away from the Reaper. The coordinator of the operation issued a cold, ruthless command to the mushers at each checkpoint. Do not stop the antitoxin for any reason whatsoever. If a dog can no longer run along the way, remove it from the sled on the spot and shoot it if you must, but keep moving forward. In a battlefield where a delay of a single second meant the death of a child, this was the expression of the immense, heavy resolve borne by the adults. January 27th, 9 p.m. At the Nenana station, the box of antitoxin, strictly wrapped in blankets, was handed over to the first musher. The relay of life, bound through a 50 below zero hell, had begun. Musher. In Alaska, it is the word used to describe the men who drive the dog sleds. They were not merely drivers. They knew every trait of their dogs, trusted them with their lives, and were solitary professionals who survived a frozen earth where modern technology was utterly useless. Upon these mushers and their dogs, the brutal nature of Alaska unleashed a merciless destruction. A record-breaking cold wave struck Alaska, with temperatures plunging to -50 degrees, and in some areas reaching a staggering -65. Romanticized stories depict every team running through perfectly, but the reality was a succession of failures and dropouts. On the team of Harry Johns, one of the relay runners, the cold was so severe that Johns' own fingers froze completely stiff with frostbite. Losing all sensation to hold the lines, the sled overturned violently. The dogs, too, damaged their lungs by inhaling the fierce, -60-degree air. Foaming blood at the mouth, they could no longer move a single step. Johns could only cradle the box of antitoxin with his freezing body, crouching in the snow, waiting for rescue that might never come. The baton was on the verge of breaking. If they failed, what awaited them was their own freezing deaths and the deaths of the children of Nome. Amidst this devastating crisis, there was one man who took on the most brutal, literal land of death. The legendary musher, Leonard Seppala, and by his side was his beloved dog, Togo. Togo, at this time, was already 12 years old. For a dog, this was well past his prime, the equivalent of a human in his late 60s. His build was small, and at a glance, he did not look capable of enduring such a brutal race. Yet, Seppala did not hesitate to place this old dog as his leader. The intelligence of this dog, with whom he had survived countless deadly situations, was his only hope. The distance assigned to Seppala and Togo's team was over a quarter of the entire journey, roughly 274 kilometers. Among the 20 teams, it was by far the longest and most dangerous section. As the time limit closed in, Seppala made a decision that verged on madness. To shorten the distance, he chose a route that cut straight across the fracturing ice of the sea, Norton Sound. Fierce gales roared, and the ice sheet beneath their feet creaked with an eerie groan. There was no telling when the ice might break, leaving them to drift into the open ocean. Visibility was absolute zero, a total whiteout. To human eyes, where the path was, and where the fractures lay, was completely invisible. Seppala gave up all control of the lines. "Togo, it's up to you!" The 12-year-old dog stared into the darkness with an obsession that went far beyond human senses. Through the raging blizzard, he listened to the faint cracking of the ice, scented the frozen sea, and sensing the collapsing ice sheets just in time, altered their route moment by moment. There was a moment when the ice cracked, and the flow stranded the team, nearly isolating them. In that instant, Togo leaped into the freezing water, took the lines in his jaws, and using his own body like an anchor, pulled the team to the opposite shore. A miracle happened. Togo beautifully crossed the deadly sea and connected the antitoxin to the next team. But the moment the baton was passed, the 12-year-old dog collapsed on the spot. The muscles in his legs had reached their absolute limit, and he had suffered deep wounds that meant he would never run again. The world would later call another dog the hero. But the backbone that supported this relay of life was, without a doubt, the bond between Seppala and this old dog, Togo, who ran while burning away every last spark of his life's fire. The baton headed toward its final destination, Nome. Chosen as the anchor to deliver the final life-saving antitoxin to the town was the team led by Gunnar Kaasen. And the name of the lead dog standing at the very front was Balto, the very same hero who would later capture the world's attention and fascinate Hollywood. Yet the historical truth of that time did not treat Balto as an elite. Balto's true owner was Leonard Seppala, the man who led the magnificent Togo. During Balto's life, Seppala had judged him poorly, saying, "He is oversized and slow, good enough for the background work of hauling heavy loads, but he lacks the makings of a leader to guide a team from the front. He is a clumsy dog." That was precisely why Seppala took Togo for the life-or-death mission, leaving Balto behind with his hired hand, Kaasen, as part of the homestay crew. Balto was a dog expected by no one, just an ordinary, clumsy dog. The night of February 1st, 1925, when it became the turn for Kaasen and Balto's team to run, a blizzard, said to be the worst in Alaska's meteorological history, slammed into them. The wind speed exceeded 60 miles per hour, 100 kilometers per hour, and the temperature plunged to minus 45 degrees. In the sheer violence of the whiteout, the musher, Gaussen, was completely blinded. He could not even see the tail of the dog running directly in front of him. He no longer knew if he was facing north or facing south. A sudden, ferocious gust flipped the sled violently. The precious box of antitoxin, which was supposed to be securely wrapped in blankets, was hurled into the pitch-black snow. Gaussen clawed at the snow like a madman with his bare hands, crying as he searched for the antitoxin, heedless of the skin peeling from his frostbitten fingers. When he finally secured the box back onto the sled, Gaussen realized human wisdom had reached its end. Whether the children's lives could be saved now depended entirely on the paws of this black, clumsy dog whom no one had ever expected anything from. Balto. Gaussen loosened the lines and screamed into the white darkness, "Balto, please, it's up to you." In that exact instant, inside the clumsy dog, something awakened. The desperate prayers of the men, the tears of the mothers, and the fading embers of the children's lives. As if the entire weight of those souls had transferred onto his back, Balto dug his claws into the earth. Balto's strength lay in the very traits Sapala had dismissed as slow and heavy. His robust, unyielding frame and a stubborn, unwavering mental fortitude that remained unshaken by anything. In a gale so fierce that other swift, elite dogs would have frozen in terror, Balto did not take a single step back. Relying solely on his extraordinary sense of smell, he avoided the dangerous fractures in the frozen river and continued to capture the invisible path that truly existed within the pitch-black snowscape. For the human who believed in him and entrusted him with the lines, he simply, stubbornly, kept moving forward. Desperately, with everything he had, Balto carved open the road to Nome.
The hands of the clock pointed to 5:30 a.m. The town of Nome was wrapped in silence. From beyond the darkness, what was faintly heard was not the sound of the wind. It was the heavy panting of dogs and the jingling of bells shaking the sled. From the windows of the houses, adults and children from their sickbeds peered out. February 2nd, 1925, 5:30 a.m. Just 127 and a half hours since the start. A white hell of 1,085 kilometers. A journey that would normally take more than 3 weeks. The men and dogs of Alaska had conquered it in mere 5.5 days. Into the frozen town of Nome, a snow-covered black shadow slid in. It was Balto's team. The antitoxin was safely delivered. The frozen vials of medicine were rushed to the hospital immediately, and the lives of the children were, at last, snatched away from the hands of the Reaper. The moment they crossed the finish line, the musher, Carson, collapsed from the sled. Refusing treatment for the frostbite on his own face and hands, he slumped down upon the snow and gently, continuously, massaged Balto's frozen front paws. Balto just quietly licked Carson's wet cheek. Weeping, Carson whispered into his partner's ear, "Damn fine dog, Balto. You brought us through." This news traveled around the world, forever engraved in history as a miracle woven by humans and dogs. Balto instantly became a hero of the era, and in New York's Central Park, a bronze statue honoring his glory stands to this day. On the other hand, the greatest contributor to the operation, the magnificent dog Togo, who whipped his 12-year-old body to cross the most dangerous sea, did not receive much public spotlight. Yet it is said that he returned to the side of his beloved master, Sapala, and basking in the light of the fireplace, lived out a proud, serene retirement.
Even if you are not expected to be a glamorous elite, if you simply, stubbornly, keep taking one step forward for the sake of someone who believes in you and entrusts you with the lines, those footprints will one day become a great light of miracles, illuminating someone else's despair. The hot breath of the nameless men and the clumsy dogs who ran, carving through the white darkness of Alaska. Even now, it echoes through that brutally cold land as a warm, enduring memory.